911, what is the address of your emergency?
I'm not sure.
Okay, what's going on?
I'm not sure.
Why are you calling 911?
Pardon me?
Why are you calling 911? What's the emergency?
Okay, never mind.
Ma'am?
Yes?
What's the emergency?
I can't really, I don't know.
You don't know why you called 911?
Yes, I do.
Okay, then why did you call?
Okay, do I have to say right now?
Yes.
Okay, then never mind.
Are you in a vehicle?
Yes.
Are you able to talk, or is there someone?
No.
Okay. Are you traveling?
Yes.
Are you going north or south?
Well, are we going north or south? We're heading south.
Okay. Are you in danger?
Yes.
Oregon 911.
I would like to order a pizza at...
You called 911 to order a pizza?
Yeah, apartment...
This is the wrong number to call for a pizza.
No, you're not.
I'm getting you now. Is the other guy still there?
Yep. I need a large pizza.
All right. How about medical? You need medical?
No. With pepperoni.
Turn your sirens off before you get there. Caller ordered a pizza and agreed with everything I said that there's domestic violence going on.
911, what's the address of your emergency? What's the problem? Tell me exactly what's happened.
There's been a shooting.
Okay, who was shot?
My wife was shot.
Was it self-inflicted?
No,
Who shot her?
I did.
Do you still have the weapon?
Yes, I do.
911 is an emergency number in Canada and the United States. An estimate of 240 million calls are made each year, and over 600,000 per day. The first nation to have a national emergency telephone number was actually the United Kingdom in 1937, using the number 999, which continues to this day. The first 911 call ever made in America was made in Haleyville, Alabama in 1968. In Canada, the first 911 call was made in 1974. Now in America, there was a push by the National Association of Fire Chiefs as early as 1957. They recommended a single number to be used when reporting fires. And when it came to calling the police, prior to 911 being established, people had to call specific precincts. And now the response would vary, because now it solely depends on the sergeant or the other ranking personnel, how they decide to respond to that call. On March 13th, 1964, an event would take place that will further push America to establish a central emergency number. This event would take place in good old New York City. Her name was Catherine Susan Genovese, better known as Kitty Genovese. She was a 28-year-old bartender, originally from Brooklyn, but by 1964 was living in Kew Gardens, Queens. She was actually living with her girlfriend at the time, Marianne Zelenko. At about 2:30 in the morning, Kitty left her job at Eve's 11th Hour Bar and began driving home in her red Fiat. While waiting at a light on Hoover Avenue, she was spotted by a man who was parked in his Chevrolet Corvair. He followed her to her home. Kitty Genovese got out of her vehicle approximately around 3 o'clock after she parked her car in the Kew Gardens Long Island Railroad Station parking lot, roughly 100 feet from her apartment in an alley at the rear of the building. The man who followed her home had parked his car at a bus stop on Austin Street. He then got out of his vehicle and he approached Kitty as she was walking to her building. She was startled and she then started running, but the attacker would quickly catch up to her. Armed with a serrated hunting knife, the attacker then stabbed her twice in the back. It was said she screamed, "Oh my God, he stabbed me, help me." Several neighbors heard her yell out, but a lot thought it was simply a domestic dispute. Others said they didn't know it was a cry for help. One neighbor, by the name of Robert Mozar, looked out of his window and saw a man standing over a woman and yelled, "Hey, get out of there." The attacker then ran away. Genovese slowly made her way toward the rear of the building, severely injured and out of the view of witnesses. It is said the attacker ran to a white car parked at the bus stop, but he then returned approximately 10 minutes later and brazenly searched the parking lot and apartment complex, eventually finding Genovese in the rear of the hallway of her building, barely conscious and laying on the floor at the base of the staircase. Realizing no one is coming to help her, he renewed his attack, assaulting Genovese and stabbing her repeatedly. During the second attack, a neighbor by the name of Carl Ross, who actually knows Kitty, stood at the top of the staircase and witnessed Kitty being assaulted and did nothing. He shut his door, gripped with fear, and proceeded to call friends for advice, according to him, before he called the police. Mozar also said that he was drunk that night. He was intoxicated when he opened the door and witnessed the assault. The attacker actually wore a wide-brimmed hat this time, something he didn't have the first time. The assault lasted for about 30 minutes in total, from the beginning of the first attack to the end of the second one. No one intervened, and the police never came. The attacker then robbed her of $49 and then fled the scene. Kitty had multiple wounds on her hands, which indicated she was trying to defend herself during the attack. Her neighbor and close friend, Sophia Farah, found Kitty shortly after the second attack and held her in her arms, whispering, "Help is on the way." Kitty would be rushed to the hospital, but unfortunately be pronounced dead on arrival. Zelenko, Kitty's girlfriend, was questioned by police at around 7 a.m. on that very day of the killing, and also interrogated by 2 other detectives. It was said the detectives were more concerned about the relationship Zelenko had with Kitty than the nature of the crime itself. Carl Ross, the individual who observed the assault from the top of the staircase, he was actually arrested for being disorderly during interrogation, and he was also considered a suspect at first. Zelenko eventually was quickly ruled out because witnesses would state that it was a man who attacked Kitty. Kitty Genovese was buried on March 16, 1964 in Lakeview Cemetery, New Canaan, Connecticut. The only thing the police had to work with was the attacker was male and the description of the vehicle. On March 19, 1964, in Ozone Park, Queens, 6 days after the killing of Genovese, a local man by the name of Raul Clary became suspicious when he saw a man removing a TV from a neighbor's house. Clary questioned the man, who claimed he was a removal worker. Clary, still suspicious, asked another neighbor by the name of Jack Brown, who confirmed that no one was moving out of that house. Clary then called the police. Brown disables the man's vehicle so that he couldn't escape by the time the police came. A detective who showed up on scene recalled a white car described like the one the suspect was driving during the Genovese killing. The television set was discovered in the back of the suspect's vehicle, and he was arrested for suspected robbery. Meet 29-year-old Winston Mosley, a local from Ozone, Queens. He worked at Remington Rand as a tab operator, doing data input for digital computers. This was a married man with 2 kids, no criminal record, even though he is well deserving of one. While in custody, Mosley would shock detectives and flat out admit to the killing of Genovese. And not only that, but he also admitted to 30 to 40 burglaries and also assaulted and murdered 2 other women. A couple weeks earlier, Anna Mae Johnson, who was shot 4 times in her stomach and burned to death in her South Ozone Park, Queens apartment. Mosley said that was him. He also confessed to the killing of a 15-year-old Barbara Kralik on July 20th, 1963, in her parents' home in Springfield Gardens, Queens. Only problem with the Kralik killing is that there was an 18-year-old by the name of Alvin Mitchell, also known as the Monster, a local gang member who was already in custody for that killing. But Mosley was very insistent that he was responsible. The police would only charge Mosley with the killing of Genovese. It remained unclear as to why they would only charge him with the Genovese murder alone, but it was said by the police they didn't want to complicate things. It actually kind of makes sense because the Genovese murder alone was more than enough to condemn this man for the rest of his life. Mosley would plead not guilty at first, but would then change his plea to guilty. This trial would only last 3 days, and on June 15th, Mosley was sentenced to death for the murder of Genovese. It was said that Mosley showed no emotion, and the judge, Judge J. Erwin Shapiro, added, "I don't believe in capital punishment, but when I see a monster like this one, I wouldn't hesitate to pull the switch myself." In 1967, that sentence was then reduced to life in prison because it was said that Mosley should have been given the opportunity to argue that he was medically insane. Now you would think someone condemned to life, that would mark the end of their criminal career. Not in this case. On March 18th, 1968, Mosley had minor surgery for a self-inflicted injury. He was transported to the Maya Memorial Hospital in Buffalo. While being transported, Mosley then attacked the correctional officer, stole his weapon, and fled to a nearby house. The house was owned by Mr. and Mrs. Kulaga. They were actually out of town for a while, so Mosley was able to stay in the home for about 3 days. The Kulagas came back to check on the home. Mosley was waiting for him. He ambushed them and held them hostage for more than an hour, gagging and binding them. He also assaulted Mrs. Kulaga. He then took the couple's car and fled. He then traveled to Grand Island, where he broke into another home and held a woman and her daughter hostage for 2 hours before releasing them unharmed. He eventually surrendered to police without incident. He received 2 additional 15-year sentences to be ran concurrently with his life sentence. In September of 1971, Mosley also participated in the deadly Attica prison riot. Over half of 2,200 men rioted over living conditions and political rights.
71 was a turbulent year for the nation's prisons. At Attica, New York State Prison, more than 1,000 inmates erupted in a volcanic orgy of mayhem, arson, and hostage seizing. It took 97 hours to quell the rioters, and when it
claiming that they were being treated as beasts.
We are men. We are not beasts, and we do not intend to be beaten or driven as such.
They took 42 staff members hostage, laying a 4-day siege of the prison. Armed correction officers and state and local police were called in to regain control of the prison. When the smoke cleared, 39 people were dead, 10 correctional officers and civilian employees, and 29 inmates. It was said law enforcement subjected many of the survivors to various forms of torture. As a result, changes were made, but by the 1980s and 90s, many of those changes were reversed, and a lot of the very conditions that sparked the riot in the first place returned. The Attica prison riot remains the worst and most deadly prison riot in American history.
Said 8 of the hostages had had their throats cut, but today the Monroe County medical examiner, having looked at the bodies, said no throats were cut at all. The medical examiner says the hostages were apparently killed by large caliber ammunition and shotgun blasts from a distance, which immediately raised the possibility that some of the hostages may in fact have been shot down by the lawmen who broke in to rescue them.
Later that decade, he obtained a Bachelor of Arts in Sociology while in prison, obviously, from Niagara University. He actually became eligible for parole in 1984. During his first parole hearing, he told the parole board the notoriety he faced due to his crimes made him a victim, stating, "For a victim, it's a one-time, 1 hour, or 1 minute affair. But for the person who's caught, it's forever." Mosley also claimed he never intended to kill Genovese, and that he considered her murder a mugging, because, quote, "people do kill people when you mug them sometimes." And not surprisingly, the parole board denied him. Mosley returned for a parole hearing on March 13th, 2008, the 44th anniversary of the Genovese killing actually. He continued to show no remorse. He was again denied. He was denied parole for the 18th time in November 2015. He then died 4 months later in March 2016 at the age of 81. Mosley had served 52 years behind bars, making him one of the longest serving inmates in New York State prison system history. Now, the Kitty Genovese incident didn't become a big story right away. That would only happen when the New York Times published a front page story with the headline, "37 who saw murder didn't call the police." The article alleged that 38 witnesses, because that's how many people who was actually interviewed by police. The 37 was actually a typo. But it was alleged that 38 witnesses saw a 30-minute attack and did nothing, not even call the cops, which wasn't entirely true. Well, which is actually far from the truth, actually. And that same year, editor Abe Rosenthal published a book named 38 Witnesses. That book actually led to widespread outrage and the development of the bystander effect theory, or another name, the Genovese syndrome, which is a psychological term where individuals are less likely to help a victim when others are around, because basically everybody is expecting everybody else to do something. The police interviewed 38 people in the Genovese incident. Only 5 would testify at trial. Now, the New York Times story was sensationalized and exaggerated. As a matter of fact, 2016, the New York Times published an insider piece that debunked the 37 witnesses' claim, stating that the portrayal was erroneous and that the claims were grossly exaggerated. Out of the 38 people who were interviewed, Most of them actually stated that they heard something, looked out their window, and saw nothing and went back to bed. Keep in mind, this was at 3 in the morning. The idea that 38 people watched a 30-minute assault and not even bother to call the cops just doesn't make sense to me. And the first time I ever heard this story, I was very critical of it. When you look at the layout of the attack, most people can't see anything anyways, and Mosley actually came back once. The New York Times also stated that he came back twice. Kitty Genovese's brother, Bill Genovese, actually made a documentary called The Witness, who documents his sister's story from start to finish. He spoke to reporters and witnesses. Some of the witnesses didn't even know they were one of the 38 who allegedly witnessed the murder. The documentary was actually nominated for an Emmy Award in 2018.
And murder my sister. When he found her inside the vestibule, Kitty screamed. He heard the door open at the top of the stairs, but quickly realized Carl Ross was going to do nothing. As he drove away from Kew Gardens after the murder, Mosley crossed paths with a driver who had fallen asleep at a red light. He approached the car, held his knife out of sight, gently woke the driver and sent him safely on his way.
Kitty Genovese's story wasn't entirely accurate and was very much exaggerated by the New York Times, as we all know. Either way, this story had a profound effect on America as a whole. From psychological studies, over the decades, sociologists and journalists spent the past 50 years studying this case, and has also been no stranger to television.
It's all right. Kept the details of her injuries out of the papers. Too personal.
I remember reading something about that.
Yeah, a young woman stabbed 14 times, then raped outside her building in the East Village.
Yeah, while 40 of her neighbors turned up their TVs so they couldn't hear the screams.
So what, they had TVs but no phones?
Oh, they called the police, all right, about 45 minutes later. Should have heard the excuses. Everybody assumed somebody else called it in.
All just watched as Kitty was being stabbed to death in broad daylight. They watched as her assailant walked away. Now, we must all fear evil men. But there is another kind of evil which we must fear most, and that is the indifference of good men.
This story is not just a story about human psychology or human behavior, but also how stories are told and how the media can have a profound effect on the masses and how easy it is to get people to believe a riveting story. Oh, and fun fact, this photo right here was actually a mugshot of Kitty Genovese. She was arrested in 1961 for bookmaking. She was fined $50 and lost her job at a bar prior to being hired at Eve's 11th hour. In 1967, the President's Commission on Law Enforcement and Administration of Justice recommended that a single number be established nationwide for reporting emergency situations. They stated the use of different telephone numbers for each type of emergency was determined to be contrary to the purpose of a single universal number. In other words, it makes more sense to have one damn number.
Well, no shit.
The Genovese case was a major talking point when this was in development. In November of 1967, the FCC met with the American Telephone and Telegraph Company, better known as AT&T.
I keep my boots clean by rolling with AT&T, you know, the company that invented the telephone. Plain talk, strong signal, nothing better.
To find a means of establishing a universal emergency number that could be implemented quickly. February 16, 1968, Haleyville, Alabama. The first 911 call was made.